Dammy had it all: luxury, fame, and the promise of a billion naira inheritance. As the only son of Chief Adami, a revered Nigerian billionaire, Dammy lived recklessly, wasting away in designer clothes and wild parties while waiting for his father's death to unlock his fortune. But when that day finally came, Dammy's world crumbled. Instead of riches, he was left with nothing. His father had willed it all to charity. Shattered and humiliated, Dammy was thrown into the real world for the first time. Stripped of wealth, mocked by society, and forced to survive like an ordinary man, he began a painful journey of self-discovery. From washing cars to serving in orphanages, Dammy learned that true wealth lies not in money, but in purpose. This is a story of pride, loss, redemption, and a son reborn. Sit back, relax, and find out what happened in this wonderful story. Dammy was the kind of young man who woke up past noon, stretched lazily in his designer pajamas, and scrolled endlessly through social media. He lived in the luxury wing of his father's mansion in Lekki, surrounded by maids and the finest things money could buy. At 27, Dammy had no job, no ambition, and no sense of urgency. Why should he? He was the only child of Chief Adami, a billionaire philanthropist known across Nigeria. While others his age were hustling to make ends meet, Dammy's life was a long vacation. He partied every night, hosted lavish pool parties, and dated models. To him, the world revolved around the moment his father would pass away and hand him the keys to the kingdom. He never imagined a world where things could go differently. His father's persistent cough and weak legs were, in Dammy's mind, a countdown to fortune. Chief Adami was not a blind man. He saw through his son's reckless behavior, his detachment, and his growing obsession with inheritance. Sitting in his leather armchair one quiet evening, he called Dammy for a talk. "My son, wealth without wisdom is a curse. You must learn to build before you inherit." Dammy rolled his eyes. "Daddy, I've heard this sermon before. Just rest. Enjoy your old age. You worry too much." Chief Adami sighed deeply. His heart ached, not from illness, but from disappointment. He once dreamt of handing over his empire to a worthy successor. But Dammy had become a stranger to values, blinded by entitlement. That night, as Chief Adami stared out of the window into the darkness, he made a decision that would change Dammy's life forever. Every weekend, Dammy was the prince of Lagos nightlife. VIP lounges knew him by name. His champagne bills could feed an entire orphanage for weeks. He wore luxury brands head to toe, from imported wristwatches to Italian loafers. "Money must be enjoyed," he would say, popping bottles and tossing bundles of naira in the air. Girls flocked around him like bees to nectar. They called him Sugar D, and took turns showing him off on Instagram. He loved the attention, the fame, the fake love. In his mind, this was the life meant for a billionaire's son. He barely noticed that Chief Adami had been rushed to the hospital again. Dammy saw no need to visit. He assumed it was another false alarm. "The old man is just stubborn. He'll be fine," he told a concerned housemaid. But the truth was, Chief Adami's days were numbered, and so was Dammy's illusion of inheritance. Chief Adami passed away on a rainy Thursday morning. The sky wept as if it knew a great man had departed. The house was suddenly full of mourners and relatives who whispered about Dammy's irresponsibility. Yet, Dammy didn't shed a single tear. Instead, he nodded politely, already imagining his first act as the new owner of his father's empire. Dressed in a sharp black suit, he stood tall beside the casket, more focused on the list of properties he thought would soon be his than on the memory of the man who raised him. People noticed. Aunties shook their heads. Old friends of the chief avoided his gaze. As the casket was lowered into the earth, Dammy smirked subtly. "Rest well, old man. I'll take it from here," he whispered. But fate had a surprise waiting just around the corner. The lawyer, a calm elderly man named Mr. Okonkwo, gathered the family in the study. The air was thick with expectation. Dammy sat confidently at the head of the table, legs crossed, sipping whiskey. "Let's get this over with," he said, smirking. Mr. Okonkwo cleared his throat. "I, Chief Adami, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this my last will and testament." Dammy's heart pounded with anticipation. But his smirk vanished when Mr. Okonkwo read, "I bequeath all my assets, companies, properties, and wealth to the Adami Charity Foundation, with no inheritance left to my son, Dammy Adami, until he proves himself worthy." The room went silent. Dammy's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. What kind of joke is this?" he shouted. But it wasn't a joke. It was the beginning of his rude awakening. Dammy stormed out of the room, his pride shattered. He locked himself in his room and screamed into his pillow. The maids whispered in corners, unsure of how to approach him. For the first time, he felt powerless, like a king without a crown. Overnight, access to the bank accounts was revoked. His black cards stopped working. The cars were returned to the estate trust. His phone stopped ringing. The girls who once clung to him vanished. Dammy sat on the bed surrounded by silence, struggling to understand how quickly his world had collapsed. He remembered the will, until he proves himself worthy. What did that even mean? Prove to who? And how? He muttered. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "You already know how." That night, there was no party. No music. No friends. Just Dammy and his regrets. He walked through the mansion, now feeling like a stranger in his own home. Every painting reminded him of his father's wisdom. Every corridor echoed with memories he had ignored. He sat by the fireplace and picked up an old photo album. There he was, at 5, smiling on his father's lap. Another photo showed them fishing in Badagry. Dammy couldn't remember the last time he laughed with his dad. Or said, "Thank you." Tears welled up in his eyes for the first time in years. "I never even said goodbye," he whispered. Guilt consumed him, heavier than all the wealth he once flaunted. It was time to face the truth. He had lost something more than money. The trustees of the estate informed Dammy he had to vacate the mansion within 2 weeks. No more personal chefs, no more chauffeurs, no more free rides. He packed his designer bags into a small car gifted to him long ago and left the gates of wealth behind. It was the first time he saw Lagos like a common man. He moved into a modest one-room apartment on the mainland, far from the glamour he once bathed in. The street was noisy, the neighbors were curious, and for the first time, Dammy had to clean up after himself. It was humiliating, it was humbling, and it was just the beginning. Dammy realized he couldn't live on pride. He sold off some of his remaining clothes and gadgets to buy food. When rent was due, he begged the caretaker for more time. Hunger became a frequent visitor, and loneliness a constant companion. He tried calling old friends, but none picked up. Not the club boys, not the girls, not even his driver. He was now invisible to the world he once ruled. As days passed, Dammy began to appreciate the value of things he had taken for granted: light, water, peace. Desperation led him to a car wash down the road. The owner, Mr. Bala, looked at him suspiciously. "You sure you want this job? You don't look like someone who knows hardship." "I need to work, sir," Dammy replied, avoiding eye contact. He started as an attendant, washing tires, scrubbing interiors, drying cars under the hot sun. People laughed when they recognized him. "Isn't that the billionaire's son? What happened?" some sneered. But Dammy no longer answered. He scrubbed, sweated, and earned his first real money. 1,000 naira never felt so heavy in his hands. The photos came online. Someone had snapped him at the car wash and posted, "From Rolls-Royce to rubber bucket." Comments were brutal. Memes went viral. People mocked his fall from grace. But Dammy kept his head down. Each day he worked harder, saving every naira. He stopped responding to negativity. Instead, he focused on the voice of his father that echoed in his mind. Wealth without wisdom is a curse. He began reading books, watching documentaries on business, and listening to sermons. He was no longer the boy who waited for inheritance. He was becoming a man trying to understand value. One afternoon, while washing a dusty Toyota, an elderly customer handed him an extra tip. "Your hands are too gentle for this kind of work. What's your story?" Dammy hesitated but then shared it all. The old man listened, then smiled. "Your father didn't disown you. He gave you a chance to grow. Don't waste it." Those words struck deep. That night, Dammy stayed awake, writing down a new plan for his life. He would become someone his father would have been proud of. Dammy visited the Olalakan Charity Foundation, the same organization that now held his father's fortune. At first, they didn't recognize him. When they did, the air tensed. "What brings you here?" the director asked. "I want to volunteer," he said. "No salary, just service." Skeptical, they gave him menial tasks: cleaning the compound, organizing files. He did them diligently. Weeks turned into months. Soon, he was teaching street kids how to read. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. Part of his volunteering took him to a rural orphanage funded by the foundation. He met children who had never tasted ice cream, worn shoes, or known parental love. One little girl clung to his leg and said, "Will you be my daddy?" He broke down in tears. For the first time, he gave, not from excess, but from compassion. He donated his savings to fix the orphanage roof. Dammy, once spoiled and shallow, was changing. Back at the foundation, an old staff member handed him a sealed letter. "Your father left this with us the day he rewrote his will. He said you'd come one day." Hands trembling, Dammy opened it. Inside, his father had written, "If you're reading this, then maybe you've chosen to become more than a shadow. Wealth is not a gift, it's a responsibility. I believe in you. Love, Dad." Dammy wept. The letter meant more than all the money he once craved. The foundation noticed his transformation. The board began involving him in decisions. He managed a small project, organizing a free medical outreach. It was successful. His leadership, humility, and commitment to change began to draw attention. The media now showed a different Dammy, a man reborn, reshaped by trial, and driven by purpose. Dammy launched a social enterprise focused on training unemployed youth in auto repair and cleaning services. He used his own experience as a symbol. "I was you," he said to the first batch of trainees. The project gained sponsors. Lives were changed. He no longer needed his father's money. He was building his own legacy. One evening, Mr. Okonkwo paid him a visit. The lawyer sat quietly, watching him lead a training session. "Chief Dammy would be proud," he said. He knew this day would come. Dammy smiled. "I hope so. I'm just getting started." Mr. Okonkwo handed him another envelope. There was a second will. "Your father left it with me on one condition: that you prove yourself." Inside it read, If my son returns to the path of purpose and service, he shall receive all that I built, not to consume, but to continue the mission. Dammy was reinstated as heir. But this time, he was ready. Dammy didn't move back to the mansion. Instead, he converted it into a shelter and skills center. He kept living modestly, still leading the foundation, still mentoring youth. He had lost everything, and found himself. The boy who waited for death to get rich had died. In his place stood a man, not defined by wealth, but by purpose. Dammy's story became a message of hope. That true inheritance is not money, but the courage to change, the strength to serve, and the wisdom to live with meaning. True wealth is not found in what we inherit, but in who we become. Entitlement can destroy, but humility builds legacy. Dammy's journey teaches us that the greatest inheritance is not riches, but responsibility, purpose, and the courage to change. If you have watched till this moment, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more powerful and touching stories with lessons like this. Until next time, stay safe, stay real.